Mic check 1, mic check 2.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
All right. Welcome back, Wolfpack. It's good to see you guys here. This is Fox Trevize here for Dire Wolf Media's weekly news recap from Behind Enemy Lines. Special show today. This time we are actually behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is just myself today. We are working on trying to find some other hosts, so stay tuned for that shortly. We apologize for not having done a game stream this week as we had promised last week because I was sick. Was it COVID? I don't know. I'm better now. I did not die. There is, contrary to popular belief, or at least contrary to expert testimony, there are in fact other diseases in the world that you can get sick with that are not COVID. I am also on Getter. Sometimes, not always. You can follow me at Fox Trevize. I also run the account at Foxes on Getter. That's the best account. As always, great show for you tonight. But first, before we get into all that, I would like to thank our sponsors. This show is only possible because of viewers like you. We would especially like to thank those of you that donate to us financially, including Kaylette, Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke Garcia, Thunder Arrogant, The White Lion, Timberwolf, and The White Wolf. Money is not the only way you can give, though. We also appreciate you liking and subscribing to us on DLive, Twitch, and YouTube, and we especially like when you share links to the channel on any social media you happen to find yourself on, as we've got no algorithms to do that for us. Also, if you would like to comment during the show, there are links in the description to Streamlabs, or you can donate lemons on DLive, or there's various other things that you can donate on DLive as well. And you can put a comment with those things, and if you're lucky, I'll read it out. Even if you're not lucky, I'll probably still read it out. So, what are we going to talk about this week? So, I am once again, unfortunately, here to tell you about the decline of America and in what specific ways that the country is failing this week. It seems like every week is that, and unfortunately, this week's no different. Just which specific part of America is falling this week, that's really the only difference. And because that's really just been how the last 9 months of the Biden administration has been going, just collapsing America, every aspect of society. The reason why is because it's basically been the Biden administration's goal the whole time, is to just methodically collapse every single sector of society that they possibly can as rapidly as possible. And then after they've collapsed or started the collapse, and you are so audacious as to have noticed that broad aspects of society are collapsing around you, the Biden administration then enlists the help of the media to gaslight you into saying that it's not happening. And America really is just not buying that lie anymore. The Democrats like to talk about the big lie when they're the ones doing the big lie. The big lie from their side being that America is doing fine when it's clearly not. And America's really just not buying it anymore. And that's become very clear in Biden's polling, which just continues to slip and slip and slip. And not just generalized polling, but if you look at specific demographic breakdowns, you've got independents, where Biden is losing a lot of support at, and that's typically where he's going to be winning or losing the vote at. And he's also losing support rather quickly within his own party. But really the polling's kind of irrelevant at this point because the establishment media will just continue producing fictional narratives that the Democrats have full support from everybody in the country. Biggest landslide in history, right? And the big tech monopoly will continue censoring any dissent. So you've only got fictionalized narrative of support coming out of the media that, oh, everybody loves the Democrats. And anyone who says, oh, the Democrats are kind of screwing stuff up, big tech will make sure to censor that. So it's pretty, they got the narrative pretty well locked in. For example, last week it was Kamala's turn to star in her own fictionalized series with paid child actors who are paid to interact with her because, authentic real children can't be trusted, or at least Kamala can't be trusted around real authentic children, similar to Joe. So last week it was Kamala's turn. This week it was Joe's turn to star in a fictional event. It was his turn at the wheel, a wheel that only he could see and which he gripped very tightly. Well, I'm sure very few of you watched it on purpose, and who could blame you? I'm sure that you guys have all seen at least a few clips of Joe's utterly bizarre behavior on stage at his recent town hall with CNN. Not to mention the absolute whoppers of lies that he told during the town hall. So tonight we're going to start off with a rather dense 90-second clip. This is like an hour and a half town hall, maybe an hour. And the clip we're about to watch only represents about 90 seconds of that, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in that 90 seconds. Joe was awfully busy during that. So let's take a look at it. Jump to the right timestamp here. There we go.
A little space.
Let me ask you about that with just in terms of inflation, because you had told us at a town hall, I think it was in July, that.
Oh no, what's going on, guys? I totally screwed this up. Man, my bad. Let me try and start this over again. It's kind of embarrassing, right?
Close the
supposed to be the master producer here. Not doing very well. All right, let's try this one more time. There we go. All right, so this is Joe Biden's town hall with CNN this week.
As well, because the big guys are in trouble, and a lot of the product that your mother makes, the thing she does, and
about that with just in terms of inflation, because you had told us at a town hall, I think it was in July, that this was just near-term inflation. The Wall Street Journal recently talked to like 67 financial experts who said that they saw high inflation going all the way or deep into 2022. Do you think it's going to last for a while?
I don't think so. I don't think it will last, depending what we do. If we stay exactly where we are, yes. If we don't make these investments, yes.
What about gas prices? Because some states are seeing
gas prices relate to a foreign policy initiative that is about something that goes beyond the cost of gas. And we're about $3.30 a gallon most places now, when it's was down in the single digits. A dollar plus. And that's because of the supply being withheld by OPEC. And so there's a lot of negotiation that is, there's a lot of Middle Eastern folks want to talk to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I'm going to talk to them, but the point is, it's about gas production. There's things we can do in the meantime, though.
Do you think do you have a timeline for gas prices of when you think they may start coming down?
My guess is you'll start to see gas prices come down as we get by and going into the into next year in 2022. I don't see anything that's going to happen in the meantime that's going to significantly reduce gas prices. But
all right, so Biden says that there's no near-term solution to inflation or the economic crisis. He also appeared at one point to be flying away in a jetpack or driving a car that nobody could see. There we go. Not really sure what he was doing there. And he admits that it's worse than what he thought it was. You may remember he had a town hall meeting with Don Lemon last July, in which he said that inflation, not only was it a thing that was going to be transitory, it was going to basically be here and gone, and you never have to think about it again. Biden was also pretty confident that massive amounts of government printing of U.S. dollars would also fix the inflation. If only we could print faster, the inflation would drop faster. Because Biden and Don Lemon have no concept of basic economics and how those work. Let's see here. So also during that clip, Joe did not really say anything that I would consider to be a coherent sentence. I got from his statement something about gas having been $1 at one point. I'm sure that it was for Joe. I'm not quite that young, or I'm not quite that old to remember gas prices being $1, but they were certainly about $1 cheaper than what they were now. I know I'm paying about $3.20 to fill up with gas. I know out west they're, I believe one city in California hit $7.50 this week a gallon, which is well, if anybody deserves it, it's California. Let's see here. So we also had Joe talking about we really basically need to have more spending. The passing his infrastructure bill and investing, and by investing he means printing and wasting all that printed money, that somehow will reduce inflation. You may remember that when Biden's lying, he will often repeat, because that's what makes it true. It's just to repeat it over and over again. Let's see here. He also was discussing gas prices being high as a result of OPEC. Again, you guys can watch this full, well, if you really want to, if you really are a masochist, you can watch this full town hall meeting. There's plenty of clips of the whole thing on YouTube. And as always, I do encourage you to go find out the fuller source. But of the clips that we just played here, Joe was talking about gas prices being high because the administration has created this theory that OPEC has restricted supply, and they're doing that on purpose to collapse the American economy by making gas prices go up. When the reality is that it is Joe Biden's administration that has restricted the supply by canceling the various pipelines and that were scheduled to be built or were almost finished built. And he's also canceled and restricted drilling on federal lands and exploratory permits, all of which has disrupted the future supply of oil. Some of it has disrupted the current supply. But energy is traded in futures contracts. And so if there is an expectation that there's not going to be as much oil a year from now, that can make the prices now go higher, especially because oil is something that you can store. So people might, large entities may buy oil and keep it on reserve. And if they know that there's not going to be any more coming because Joe Biden just shut down all these pipelines, they might buy more now because they know that there's not going to be any more later, creating a artificial shortage and thus raising the price. So all of the reasons why you're paying more at the pump now are directly related to Joe Biden policies, directly related to him canceling pipelines, directly related to him restricting drilling on federal lands, directly related to there's a whole other story about restricting offshore drilling. That's the next set of energy regulations that are coming. That's all directly affecting gas prices right now. It's got nothing to do with what OPEC's doing. When Joe Biden got into office, we were energy independent, we were producing enough, and we were scheduled to have enough infrastructure created to continue producing enough for all of America's domestic needs for essentially until we would no longer need fossil fuels for definitely the next 100 years. And Joe Biden canceled all that. And like everything he's doing, it caused problems for America, and he's gaslighting, trying to pretend that it's somebody else's fault. But we're not buying it. Let's see here. We've also... Yeah, so as you can see on the screen here, we got Joe Biden with... I don't know what he's doing. He's got his fist up in the air, some kind of weird movement there. But if you watch the clip here, he's just got his hands up in this like weird like steering wheel position. I don't know what he's doing for a very awkwardly long amount of time here. And that was pointed out because during this clip, really him and Anderson were both very much stumbling over their words, none of them making coherent sentences. But what was fun about this clip was all of the memes that came from it. So we have here some lovely photoshops of...
About that, with just in terms of inflation, because...
Joe Biden riding a pony. That one was pretty good. There's another one of him on a rocket ship, or a jetpack, which I seem to have lost. But yeah, so not a total waste of time. I would say that the town halls being a place that generates new funny content for Twitter, certainly of value to some companies, of value to me emotionally. But other than that, not a whole lot was accomplished at this town hall meeting. And that really showed up in the ratings because basically nobody watched it. Let's see here. There was some other things too. So not just again, we'll kind of continue going through the lies that he said there, which is it's really strange that they chose to do this town hall. There was really no reason to do it other than, I guess, just to get out in front of a bunch of pending crises and try to lie about them. So like I said, he just lied about inflation. Inflation's not going to be transitory. Inflation is not going to be solved by spending and printing more money. He lied about the gas prices. The gas prices are high because of OPEC. No, gas prices are high because the Biden administration canceled all of our gas infrastructure. Let's see here. We also have lying about defending Taiwan, which is kind of a big deal. So let's watch this clip here of Joe Biden talking about our allies and U.S. military strategy.
Bring in Glenn Niblo, a student at Loyola University, originally from Connecticut. He's a Republican. Glenn, welcome.
Where in Connecticut are you from?
Greenwich.
It's great.
China just tested a hypersonic missile. What will you do to keep up with them militarily, and can you vow to protect Taiwan?
Yes and yes. We are militarily.
Sorry, those Joe Biden pauses are just like painful. You just never know what's going to happen.
Militarily, China, Russia, and the rest of the world knows we have the most powerful military in history of the world. Don't worry about whether they're going to be more powerful. What you do have to worry about is whether or not they're going to engage in activities that will put them in a position where they may make a serious mistake. And so I have spoken and spent more time with Xi Jinping than any other world leader has. That's why you hear people saying Biden wants to start a new Cold War with China. I don't want a Cold War with China. I just want to make China understand that we are not going to step back. We are not going to change any of our views.
So are you saying that the United States would come to Taiwan's defense if China attacked?
Yes, we have a commitment.
All right, that was a pretty big statement there. If we'll play that last little bit there.
Taiwan's defense if China attacked?
Yes, we have a commitment.
All right, so if China attacks Taiwan, will the U.S. come to the defense of Taiwan? Now, I know what the answer is supposed to be, but it's pretty big for Biden to say, yes, like unequivocally, we will come to the defense of Taiwan if China attacks it. There is actually a retraction from the White House, which is, again, this interesting phenomenon of Biden will say something, and the next day or later that day, the quote-unquote White House, don't know who that is, the White House will put out a statement retracting what Biden said, when in theory, Joe Biden is supposed to be leading the thought process at the White House. So if Biden says it, that should be the position of the White House. But as we know from earlier in the year, the position of the White House does not always match the position of the president, because I guess they are different entities. No word yet on who exactly the White House is, whether it's the physical building or a shadowy cabal of people. Both conspiracy theories seem to have equal merits in my book, at least. So we have from Reuters an article about the retraction from the White House. So we'll read through the first little bit here, because kind of that's where the meat of it is. So again, Biden on Thursday night, direct response to would the U.S. intervene if China attacked Taiwan. Biden says, yep, unequivocally yes. And then so from Reuters, we have, let's see here. So from Washington, the White House on Friday reiterated that Joe Biden was not signaling a change in U.S. policy toward Taiwan when he said the United States would come to the island's aid if it was attacked by China. And analysts dismissed the president's remarks as a gaffe. That's a hell of a gaffe to say that we would go to war with the nearest peer adversary there is in the world, the strongest possible adversary in the world right now, obviously China. It's a pretty big gaffe to say that we would go to war with them over a particular red line if that's not what Joe Biden really meant. All right, Reuters continues. While Washington is required by law to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself, it has long followed a policy of, quote, strategic ambiguity on whether it would intervene militarily to protect Taiwan in the event of a Chinese attack. Let's see here. Biden called that into question when he was asked at a CNN town hall in Baltimore on Thursday night whether the United States would come to Taiwan's defense if it was attacked by China. And Biden replied, quote, "Yes, we have a commitment to do that," which it sounds like we don't actually have a commitment to defend Taiwan. We do morally, and it's a strategic benefit in the region that Taiwan maintains its independence. However, that represents a foreign policy, not necessarily a treaty or a law that we would militarily defend Taiwan. I believe that the direct law says that the direct law and treaty that we have with them is that we are merely able to provide them equipment or access to equipment or funding to purchase equipment, not that we are going to have directly one or all of the military branches with Americans fighting on Taiwanese soil against the Chinese if something like that were to happen. But we would provide them weapons. So basically, we've decided that we would be arms dealers, but not mercenaries when it comes to Taiwan. However, Biden has now called that into question, called that ambiguity about whether or not we would attack into question when he said that, yes, we have a commitment to do that. Again, like I said, it's kind of interesting that Joe Biden will say something like that. That's a pretty big deal. That's one of the most contentious areas in the world right now is Taiwan and China in that region of the ocean. That's a pretty contentious area right now. And Joe Biden making a declarative statement about U.S. military policy in the region. And then less than 24 hours later, the quote unquote White House, whoever the hell that is, retracts Joe Biden's statement, the commander in chief's statement. So it's a strange time. Let's see here. So shortly after he spoke, a White House spokesperson said there was no change in policy. An analyst said it appears that the president misspoke. So Joe Biden says something. A White House spokesperson, unnamed, says, nope, Joe Biden didn't mean that. And then analysts all agree that, well, Joe Biden's an idiot. He misspoke. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Wow. That's and Reuters is a pretty, they're pretty straight line, hard-nosed reporting outlet here. So for them to have a sentence like that, it's a pretty big deal. All right, last paragraph we'll read out of this article. Again, this is from Reuters. You guys can, I encourage you guys to go look up these sources and read these yourself to get the full context. But last paragraph we'll read for tonight on this is asked at a Friday news briefing whether it was Biden's intention to move away from, quote, strategic ambiguity to an unambiguous statement about how the United States would respond to a Chinese attack on Taiwan, White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki said, quote, "Our policy has not changed. He was not intending to convey a change in policy, nor has he made a decision to change our policy." End quote. So, again, just to kind of reiterate the basics for anybody who's not a foreign policy wonk or an expert on the South China Sea. Basically, the way we've been operating U.S. foreign policy in that region for several decades now is, as this just said, strategic ambiguity. You don't know what we're going to do. We haven't committed to anything one way or the other. We might attack. We might not attack. It's kind of a big bluff. And China has, until recently, not felt confident enough to overpower us if we're not bluffing. And it's been that bluff that's kept China at bay because they just don't know what we're going to do. And that's this kind of links in a little bit with what Milley did last month when we found out that General Milley had made a promise to the People's Liberation Army general, his quote-unquote counterpart, made a promise to a foreign adversary's military that he would give them U.S. troop movements if we ever were planning on attacking China. He told China that, you don't got to worry about the ambiguity. You don't got to worry about, will we, won't we. I will tell you, I will leak classified troop movements to tell you that we will attack before we do. That's what Milley did. And that broke a lot of what U.S. foreign policy in that region relies on, which is that strategic ambiguity. So it started with Milley, that he broke the strategic ambiguity by making a commitment to a foreign adversary that he would leak troop movements prior to any attack. So that broke that, and we've seen a lot of aggression from China the last year since Milley has said that to them. And then we've got Biden. Was it a gaffe? Yeah, it was probably a gaffe, but is it kind of a bad thing that the president's gaffing on something that is totally reliant on us being ambiguous and you don't know what we're going to do? I don't know. Maybe it's actually a good thing. Maybe kind of like the Trump doctrine, where Trump was just as mad dog. He didn't know what the hell he was going to do. And that really kept North Korea and really kept China in line while Trump was there, and really kept the Middle East in line as well. If you're a general in the Middle East, you were just as likely to get on your plane as you were to have a cruise missile blow up your motorcade on the way there. Trump was a crazy man, and our enemies respected that. And they did not want to test what Trump would do because they weren't sure what he was going to do. We seem to have lost that under the Biden administration, though. If Biden is not just crazy from a foreign policy perspective, but is actually crazy, actually is unpredictable because he doesn't know what his plan is supposed to be. He doesn't understand our foreign policy position with Taiwan. Clearly, he doesn't understand that. Maybe that will have kind of a similar effect to what Trump's mad dog policy was, in that our enemies might be scared that senile old Biden might forget that he's supposed to be selling out to the Chinese and might just launch the nukes anyways. So, I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing. Hopefully. That's the only thing that we can hope now, is that hopefully it's a good thing. It probably isn't, but we can hope. Alrighty, let's see here. So, during Biden's town hall,
Nazi fags.
Do you have plans to visit?
Dare you?
Jews you need.
Why would you do that?
Whoa. Alrighty, so
My theory is that the White House is both a shadow cabal and a sentient building. Black magic fueled by Clinton human sacrifices has been combined with deep-fake blockchain artificial intelligence in order to demonically haunt the building.
Thank you, Triumvirate, for sending us that super chat. I agree with most of what you said, though you've missed a critical. There's a critical flaw in your theory, in that you did not say quantum. Quantum is a required buzzword when you're talking about blockchain. So you're almost there. You're almost there, but your theory is clearly wrong because you didn't say quantum. Alrighty, let's see here. So Joe Biden lied about the border crisis, and again, thank you very much for that $10. Much appreciated. Let's see here. So let's listen to Joe Biden talk about the border here.
Do you have plans to visit the southern border?
I've been there before, and I haven't. I mean, I know it well. I guess I should go down, but the whole point of it is I haven't had a whole hell of a lot of time to get down. I've been spending time going around looking at the $900 billion worth of.
He's taken quote unquote vacations to Delaware, like 3 out of the last 4 weekends. So I think he did have some time, if he just wasn't taking so many vacations. We'll let him continue, though.
Damage, looking at the $900 billion worth of damage done by hurricanes and floods and weather and traveling around the world. But I plan on, now my wife Jill has been down. She's been on both sides of the river. She's seen the circumstances there. She's looked into those places. You notice.
Why is Jill Biden, why is the First Lady, I guess, advising and researching border policy? I was not aware that the First Lady was a position that had any kind of authority on that. This is not the first time that we've heard about the First Lady engaging in foreign policy and national security discussions, but all the more power to the First Lady, I guess. We've seen Jill Biden's work. We've gone over her dissertation on the show before, and she's very I don't know. I don't want to tell a lie about her. She's not very academically rigorous. So I would say her doing research on the border probably will not yield very good research results. Let's see here. Yes, but she is a doctor, as was pointed out in chat. Because being a doctor means that you know things, and that, you know, the whole process of becoming a doctor isn't completely corrupt. All right, let's hear. So key takeaways from that are Joe Biden said, I have been down to the border. I would like to get down to the border again. I just, you know, I don't have much time. And so I sent my wife down there, presumably to get him sandwiches. So that was a lie, because Joe Biden actually has not been to the border really at any point during his career, which is pretty impressive given that he's been, you know, in government for 51 years at this point. Not an exaggeration. Not a lie, guys. You know, I'm totally serious, guys. It's pretty incredible that in that time he's not actually been down to the border, but he just said that he has been down to the border and he would get down there again. He thinks he should get down there again. He just doesn't have the time. So Jen Psaki was asked about this on Friday, and here by Mr. Peter Ducey, who's a real all-star reporter. Let's watch that exchange here.
Else the president said last night. Why did President Biden say he has been to the border?
Well, Peter, as you may have seen, there's been reporting that he did drive through the border when he was on the campaign trail in 2008, and he is certainly familiar with the fact, and it stuck with him, with the fact that in El Paso, the border goes right through the center of town. But what the most important thing everyone should know and understand is that the president has worked on these issues throughout his entire career and is well-versed in every aspect of our immigration system, including the border. That includes when he was vice president, and he went to Mexico and Central America 10 times to address border issues and talk about what we can do to reduce the number of migrants who are coming to the border. He worked in a bipartisan manner with senators like Ted Kennedy, Harry Reid, John McCain, and others to push for comprehensive immigration reform. He does not need a visit to the border to know what a mess was left by the last administration. That's his view.
Does that count as a visit? He said, I've been there before. You're saying he drove by for a few minutes. Does that count?
What is the root cause? Where are people coming from who are coming to the border, Peter?
The president said that
I'm asking you a question because I think people should understand the context.
No, you're
where do
answering
people
the question
where
with
do
the
people
question. I'm asking you if that
Okay,
counts.
I'll answer it for you. People come from Central America and Mexico to go to the border. The president has been to those countries 10 times to talk about border issues. There is a focus right now on a photo op. The president does not believe a photo op is the same as solutions.
But he said,
That may be a difference he has with
but
Republicans.
that's not what he said either. He said, I guess I should go down. So does he think that he needs a photo op? Is that what he's saying?
He
Is that what you're
doesn't.
saying?
And that's a fundamental disagreement he has. I would say the former president went to the border at least once, maybe more. You may know the numbers.
Has anything
How did that immigration policy result, Peter? That immigration policy resulted in separating kids from their parents, building a border wall that's feckless and that costs billions of dollars for taxpayers. The president fundamentally disagrees on how we need to approach the immigration issue.
Anything changed at the border between 2008 when he drove by and 2021?
Aside from the fact that migrants are still coming to the border through the course of Democratic and Republican presidents, and the need to reform the immigration system is even farther long overdue, no. But we need to work with Democrats and Republicans to get that done. I think we're going to have to keep chugging along here. Go ahead.
Okay, so again, you had Joe saying, "Oh, I've been down to the border," and Peter Ducey calling that out at the next press conference, saying, "No, yeah, you really haven't been down to the border." And Jen Psaki goes, "Yes, he has been to the border. He drove past it once in 2008." Okay, if that's what we're gonna go with. The specific example that Jen was trying to, I guess, bring up there was Joe Biden had a rally in New Mexico. The nearest airport was in El Paso, which, as you may know, is a border town. Joe Biden landed in El Paso and immediately got into a car and headed north, not to the border, but to his rally in New Mexico. And I guess, I mean, I've driven places before. I guess after having driven by a place, I suppose I know a lot about it. Especially about the ins and outs of the immigration policy, just from having driven past the border one time 13 years ago. if that's what they want to go with, that's fine with me. So again, you've got just lies. All of these very much lies. Everything at the town hall was essentially lies. You did have one moment which made me realize that it wasn't just what Joe was saying that was a lie. It was the entire town hall that was itself a lie. And I want to bring you back to last week when we watched that that fictionalized TV show that Kamala Harris is now starring in. And I say that because Kamala Harris is the star, and all the people in the show with her are supposedly real, authentic children interested in STEM. But as we found out last week, they're actually hired child actors. They're being paid to act in a TV show starring the vice president. It's all completely fake. None of it's real or authentic interactions. It is a produced, scripted, written, acted TV show. So Kamala is starring in her own fictional show, and I realized after we're going to watch this clip right here, Joe Biden is actually starring in his own fictional show too. Let's watch the clip I'm talking about here, though, and we'll get back to that.
Mr. President, let me ask you a follow about that. As many as 1 in 3 emergency responders in some cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, right here in Baltimore, are refusing to comply with city vaccine mandates. I'm wondering where you stand on that. Should police officers, emergency responders, be mandated to get vaccines? And if not, should they be stay at home or let go?
Yes and yes. By the way,
All right. Should first responders be let go? Joe Biden replies, yes and yes. And the crowd goes wild, clapping, whooping for first responders getting fired. So, like I said, this is the clip that made me realize, the entire town hall is the exact same thing as what Kamala Harris was doing. It's all simulated, all scripted, all using actors. Why am I saying it's all using actors? Just think to yourself, do you need evidence that this was simulated, or can you on your own realize, you're not going to be able to pull together a group of random Americans and get them to clap immediately for first responders getting fired. The idea that you could pull a random sampling of Americans, put them in an audience, and get them to clap like seals, whoop and holler over first responders getting fired, that's an authentic group of Americans. Absolute bullshit. So that is why I think this was entirely scripted. This was all actors acting it out. CNN filled the crowd with actors because you're never going to find a group of randomly chosen Americans and get them to clap like that for first responders being fired. Why CNN and Joe Biden decided to produce this fictional content, I don't know. But I believe that this is an attempt at trying to sway public sentiment into agreeing that they wanted to fire more first responders. Like I said, broadly, it doesn't have wide support. You're not going to find a group of Americans that support mass firings of first responders. But the administration wants to do that, so they have to figure out a way of tricking people into thinking that it's popular opinion. Unfortunately, as we know, a lot of people will kind of go with the crowd. If they think other people think it's popular, they'll tend to just go along with it. And so right now, the administration's trying to create this fake support for firing first responders over vaccine mandates that just doesn't exist in an attempt to try to get the NPCs to think, that's a popular position. I have a popular position. I want to be part of the crowd. I will also clap for first responders getting fired. Don't fall for it. It's not real. It is, and I don't think I have to justify that CNN would fill an entire town hall with synthetic viewers because we've definitely seen them do that before. We've seen CNN do man on the street interviews with their own cameramen. We've seen CNN anchors giving debate questions to Democrat candidates before. CNN filling a crowd at a quote-unquote town hall with paid actors would be by far not even the most egregious thing that they've ever done. But I think that they're all actors because I don't think Similar to how I don't think you're going to be able to find a group of children that are comfortable interacting with Kamala Harris, I don't think that you're going to find a group of American adults that are comfortable with clapping for first responders being fired. So on to the next story here, because it seems fitting that CNN would help Joe Biden lie to the American people, as lying is essentially CNN's business model. Which brings us to our next story. CNN has now tripled down on the lie that Joe Rogan was taking, quote, horse medicine. Several times in the last few weeks, we have talked on this show about how CNN and other left-wing outlets have lied about Joe Rogan taking, quote, horse dewormer. As a quick recap, Joe got COVID a few months ago, and his personal doctor prescribed him a wide variety of treatments and therapeutics, ranging from FDA-approved medicines to experimental but promising off-label drugs. Among them was the, quote, human version of ivermectin. Ivermectin can be used as a horse dewormer in the same way that Xanax and aspirin can be used for dogs. However, all of these drugs have wide-scale usage and history for effectively treating human-related illnesses. As has been reported multiple times, the version of ivermectin that Joe Rogan was prescribed was formulated for humans and was dosed in a dosage amount that was appropriate for humans. The form and dosage of ivermectin that Joe Rogan took could not have been used effectively to treat a horse, because it just would not have been enough. Nonetheless, CNN and many other outlets reported over and over and over again that Joe Rogan was endangering his audience by taking horse dewormer. How dare he? For just one example, Jim Acosta said, quote, in case you missed it, Rogan said ivermectin. Yes, that's the deworming medicine made to kill parasites in farm animals. End quote. Which is actually not entirely true, because as Direwolf Media reported a few weeks ago, only ivermectin is used on horses, while other kinds of livestock will typically take a similar but different drug called avermectin. So Jim Acosta claiming that it's a deworming medicine used to treat farm animals is not entirely true. It's used to treat one specific kind of farm animal. The other kinds of farm animals would be taking something called avermectin, which is not approved for use in humans in any case or any dose. This continual lying by CNN prompted Joe Rogan to bring on CNN's medical specialist, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, onto his show to confront him about the lies CNN was perpetrating. Eventually, Gupta had to admit that CNN was wrong, but after the interview with Joe Rogan, Sanjay Gupta wrote a very slanderous op-ed in which he claimed that he was scared Joe Rogan would physically assault him during the interview. Yeah, that's right. Joe Rogan, who I believe that his podcast with Sanjay was like in the 1790s, like, 1,790 some podcasts Joe has done. You were talking about tens of thousands of hours that Joe Rogan has been on podcasts with people. And Sanjay is pretty sure that he's the one where Joe Rogan's going to just go into a roid rage and just beat his ass across the table. He actually wrote that in an op-ed after the interview. Sanjay wrote that he was scared Joe Rogan would leap across the table and throttle his neck. CNN is filled with absolute insane people. They are absolutely delusional. All right, let's see here. So after Sanjay slandered Joe Rogan after the interview, he then went on with Don Lemon, who Don Lemon's been very defensive over Joe Rogan calling out CNN, and so Sanjay went on Don's show this week where they both tripled down on the lie. Speaking to Gupta on his show, Don Lemon said, quote, Rogan did say something about ivermectin that I think wasn't actually correct about CNN and lying. Ivermectin is a drug that is commonly used as a horse dewormer. So it's not a lie to say that So it's not a lie to say that the drug is used as a horse dewormer. I think that's important. And it's also not approved for COVID. Correct. And then Gupta responded, yes, that is correct. So again, they're trying to create this implication that Joe is taking horse drugs. And it's just not true. It's just not true. Let's see here. So with CNN's ratings and budget completely eroding as rapidly as the public distrust in them grows, you'd think that they might shy away from lying about somebody who has a much, much, much bigger audience. You would say horse-sized even. If they were going to lie, if CNN was going to lie, you might assume that they wouldn't lie about something that was so obviously wrong. Maybe they would have something that was a little more easy to figure out, or something that was a little less obvious, right? The search into ivermectin's use in humans to effectively and safely fight a wide range of infections is actually Nobel Prize winning. So ivermectin is such an important drug in humans, it won a Nobel Prize. It didn't win a Nobel Prize for its use in horses. It won a Nobel Prize for its use in humans. So I think that's important context. I mean, there's probably all kinds of little factoids about ivermectin that CNN chose to omit. The fact that it can be used, again, can be used in horses is the only extra factoid that they chose to add in there. If CNN had listed off, 30 or 40 other factoids of, oh, here's all of the possible uses for ivermectin, maybe I would agree that they were doing this in good faith. But the only little factoid extra bit that they added was that it can be used in horses, and they didn't say anything about it being a Nobel Prize winning for its use in humans. Let's see here, which I think is important context. There has been extensive testing with promising results that ivermectin may help in fighting certain viruses due to it interrupting certain viral replication pathways. That is something that's being explored as a possible treatment for COVID. There's right now there is Pfizer and Moderna both have pills that are soon to be available and are in testing right now. And I'm not a medicinologist or whatever the hell they're called. Probably a pharmacist. I'm not a pharmacist or a chemist. But from what I understand, the Pfizer and Moderna pills that are supposed to be like once daily COVID prophylactic pills, those interrupt the pathway, one of the pathways that COVID uses. And supposedly ivermectin is also able to disrupt that same pathway. Look, do some of your own research. I'm not a chemist, but that's my understanding. So the idea that ivermectin may have some efficacy in stopping viral replication, and COVID is virus, is not without merits. There seems to be at least people interested in studying that. Let's see here. And you may remember Trump famously got passed as an executive order the right to try, where people who had terminal illnesses were able to try certain drugs off-label that may help them with their terminal illness, even if there wasn't enough FDA studies to confirm that. Because once you're at the kind of end of life, you should have the right to try whatever is available, not just what the FDA says that you can improve. So COVID, for most people that get it, again, it is a lethal disease for some people, but most people who get COVID, that's not a terminal illness. So this wouldn't necessarily, ivermectin wouldn't necessarily fall under right to try, but it's kind of in the spirit of it, right? The spirit of, if there's drugs out there that you think can help you with certain things, there's some evidence about it. Again, it's not that there's no evidence that ivermectin can help. There seems to be a lot of anecdotal studies about it. Joe Rogan's doctor wanted to try it on Joe. Joe agreed to it. If you've got a medical doctor who thinks, hey, I think that this drug could work for this application, I want to give it a try, and their patient consents to it, you should be able to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Joe wasn't buying ivermectin from, some drug dealer named Spider in a back alley behind a dumpster. He got it from his doctor. His doctor said, hey, let's try this. And Joe said, hey, I understand the science behind this to a certain extent, and I consent to trying it. There's really no need to get the government involved or CNN involved any further than that. There's really no reason, the doctor consents, the patient consents, didn't you forget somebody? And it's CNN. CNN didn't consent. Sorry. No. So as soon as you and your doctor both agree to something, there's really no reason for the government to get super involved in that. Unless, of course, it involves you and your doctor agreeing to kill somebody. Then perhaps we can have some regulations around that. Let's see here. So after first allowing Don Lemon to defend the network's coverage of Rogan, CNN, Don's parent company here. So CNN let Don they gave him some rope to hang himself with. And Don tried to vigorously defend himself, and the network. The day after, CNN actually issued a statement to the Washington Post, that, well, let's just take a look at what they wrote here. So CNN, issued the statement to the Washington Post, quote, "The heart of this debate has been purposefully confused and ultimately lost." I'm getting a phone call. Alrighty. I rejected my phone call just for you guys. It could have been important. Who knows? But you guys come first. Alrighty. So, all right. So this was this was the statement that CNN put out, trying to cover their ass after Don Lemon went off on his tirade about Joe Rogan taking horse pills. So CNN says, quote, "The heart of this debate has been purposefully confused and ultimately lost. It's never been about livestock versus human dosages of ivermectin. The issue is that a powerful voice in the media who, by example and through his platform, sowed doubt in the proven and approved science of vaccines while promoting the use of an unproven treatment for COVID-19, a drug developed to ward off parasites in farm animals." They added, quote, "The only thing CNN did wrong here was to bruise the ego of a popular podcaster who pushed dangerous conspiracy theories and risked the lives of millions of people in doing so." So kind of funny that CNN was trying to clean up what Don Lemon had said, and they kind of did in the first sentence there. They said, it's not about the difference between human doses and livestock doses of ivermectin, and that's true. Whereas, Don Lemon and Sanjay were very focused on that. Well, it could be taken for a horse, right? It could be a horse dosage. You don't know. But then after that sentence where it looks like maybe they're gonna walk back some of that stuff, they then go into this tirade about how, Joe Rogan's endangering millions of people by lying, and he's promoting anti-science, and he's promoting doubt about vaccines, even though Joe had multiple times said people who are in risk categories should definitely get it. Anybody who wants to get it, he thinks that they should get it. He knows several people who were vaccinated and they were fine. He has some anecdotes about people who were vaccinated and weren't fine. And he has some concerns about some of the data for specific demographics coming out. Not citing his concerns off of research papers that he didn't do, but scientists did. Scientists did research papers on the risks of men under 16 receiving the vaccine. There was a scientific study about things that happened to boys 16 and under after they got the vaccine, and Joe was concerned about it. And I guess referencing a scientific paper and a scientific study, that's now anti-science. Let's see here. So it's not really a debate anymore. CNN just obviously lied about Joe. Joe called them a liar. He called them out on their lie. They were obviously trying to imply that he was taking horse drugs. They were trying to imply he was encouraging his audience to take horse drugs, and it's just not true. Let's see here. The version of ivermectin that Joe used was not and never was or never could be used to treat farm animals because it's a human dose. The dosage that the horses are taking is something like 2 to 3 grams of it, whereas a dose that you're going to take as a human is going to be measured in milligrams. You'd have to give a horse a couple of boxes worth of ivermectin before they could actually see any effects from it. Let's see here. So unproven treatments are used for all kinds of different diseases all the time. That's what human trials and experimental medicines are. They are not proven to cure COVID, But there has been research that shows that it's generally safe to have in your body. And so the idea is, well, it might help with COVID, and we know it's probably not going to harm you physically. So there's not a ton of harm in taking it because there's some possibility that it'll help, and there's really low probability that it won't help or that it'll make you worse. But what's funny is that until they did the human trials with the vaccines were also unproven medicines. So you got to wonder, how was it that the people in the vaccine trial groups, how were they able to get the vaccine if it wasn't proven? Is it possible that a doctor decided that it was okay to give it a try so that they could see if it worked? So that's interesting. Alrighty. So the lie that CNN is telling about Joe is just one lie in a much larger tapestry of lies, that tapestry being the entire COVID narrative. The cornerstone of which is the lie about where did the virus originate. Where did the virus originate is the cornerstone of the entire narrative of COVID. Let's see here. So where did the virus come from to begin with? We've been wondering that for a long time, but no more. No more do you have to wonder, where did the virus originate from? Because now, for the fourth time, or the fifth time, we've lost count. For the fourth or fifth time, Direwolf Media now presents the triple, double, quarter, extra, ultra, mega confirmation that the non-practicing doctor, Fauci, used your tax dollars to fund the creation of, you guessed it, COVID-19. Yes, for the fourth or fifth time, we are now confirming that Dr. Fauci, with his power and the NIH, directed your tax dollars to fund the creation of COVID. We've learned this from a top National Institute of Health official who admitted on Wednesday in a letter saying that U.S. taxpayers funded gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses in Wuhan, China, and revealed that EcoHealth Alliance and in the letter they also revealed that EcoHealth Alliance, the U.S. nonprofit that funneled NIH money to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, was in fact using gain-of-function research. We have a breakdown from the Daily Wire, but just to kind of re-clarify what I just said there, the letter that was issued from the NIH this week that confirmed that the taxpayer money was used to fund gain-of-function research. What they said is basically the National Health Institute under Fauci directed taxpayer money to the nonprofit EcoHealth Alliance. EcoHealth Alliance is run by Fauci's friends and people who were formerly in the federal government. The EcoHealth Alliance then funneled this money to China, to the Wuhan lab, to study gain-of-function research. Essentially what's going on here is you've got a group of government officials creating their own revolving door where some of them will, quote-unquote, retire from the federal government. They then created a nonprofit called EcoHealth Alliance, and then got the remaining people in the federal government to funnel a bunch of money to them and then launder it through this nonprofit. And so NIH can't fund gain-of-function research directly, right? So they created EcoHealth Alliance, this nonprofit, and so instead of funding gain-of-function research directly, they sent the money to EcoHealth, and then EcoHealth sent it to go research gain-of-function research. It's this laundry operation where they were using a nonprofit to launder taxpayer dollars to do this extremely dangerous research. Alrighty, so Daily Wire did a very nice breakdown of the letter from the NIH, so we will read through their analysis because it's a little bit easier than recreating it on my own. Alrighty, let me take a drink here. I'll check chat. See here. Dyer says that the drug dealer Spider is a good guy. I guess we have differing ideas of what a good guy is. He's definitely no corn pop though. Alrighty, so from the Daily Wire, documents released yesterday by the National Institute of Health appeared to contradict previous claims by EcoHealth Alliance regarding the subject of experiments on bat coronaviruses in Wuhan, China, raising further questions over whether the U.S. government funded. Let me start that over. So documents released yesterday by the National Institute of Health appeared to contradict previous claims by EcoHealth Alliance regarding the subject of experiments on bat coronaviruses in Wuhan, China, raising further questions over whether U.S. government funding contributed to so-called gain-of-function research. In a letter to Representative James Comer, ranking member of the Oversight and Reform Committee, the National Institute of Health provided additional information and documents regarding NIH's much scrutinized grant to EcoHealth Alliance. Quote, the limited experiment described in the final progress report provided by EcoHealth Alliance was testing if spike proteins from naturally occurring bat coronaviruses circulating in China were capable of binding to the human ACE2 receptor in a mouse model. The letter, signed by NIH Principal Deputy Director Lawrence A. Tabak, states, quote, in this limited experiment, laboratory mice infected with the SHC014WIV1 bat coronavirus became sicker than those infected with the WIV1 bat coronavirus. The NIH added that, quote, this was an unexpected result of the research as sometimes occurs in science. So to translate that back to English, the the EcoHealth Alliance was given money. They used that money to test whether or not existing coronaviruses that were circulating around China, if they were capable of infecting human cells. So they have a way of genetically altering mice so that the mice have more humanized cells. It's too just take my word for it or research it yourself. They're called humanized mice. And so what they do with those humanized mice is they test viruses on them to see if those viruses are capable of infecting humans. So what EcoHealth Alliance did was they weren't testing, focus on what I've got highlighted here. They weren't testing viruses. They were testing specific spike proteins on a particular virus. Now, what they did is they kind of backdoor did gain of function research. So what I just read here is direct quote out of their letter in which they admitted doing gain of function research. What this opening part here is actually kind of a lie. It's kind of a misdirection. Oh, we weren't researching gain of function. We were researching if we took a specific spike protein from an infectious virus and put it onto a deadly virus, if it could then infect humans. So what they actually did was they didn't test a virus with this spike protein. They copied the DNA strand for the spike protein and put it into a different virus, giving that other virus the gained function of this new spike protein. And then they tested to see if it would be infectious to humans by using these humanized mice. If that's a little bit complicated here, the key takeaway from this is that this letter confirms that EcoHealth Alliance was in fact using gain-of-function research. They were attempting to define it as something other than gain-of-function research. And the NIH, which Fauci heads up, Fauci's in charge of all of the the health administrations in the federal government. Fauci and the National Health Institute were aware. They were aware of these. They were aware of these experiments, and they were aware that they were purposefully redefining them as not gain of function, even though they were technically gain of function. So this is yet another confirmation that Anthony Fauci lied before Congress during multiple hearings in May and in July, when he swore under oath definitively that he and the NIH and the NHS, yes, that they did not fund gain of function research. Fauci swore up and down that they did not fund gain-of-function research. And since then, we've seen letters from EcoHealth Alliance saying that they were doing gain-of-function research. We've seen other evidence from the NIH and leaked emails from Fauci and other people in the federal government that were in the opening days of the pandemic. Fauci and these other government officials were emailing each other back and forth saying, hey, are any of our gain-of-function research projects, are they responsible for this? And then now we've got this letter from the NIH again, trying to cover their ass because they know that a storm's coming down on them because everybody's realizing, oh, crap. In Wuhan, where the coronavirus originated, they were doing gain-of-function research on coronaviruses, and the U.S. was funding that. That seems to be absolutely evident at this point, and this letter represents our definitely our third, I think it's the fourth or fifth confirmation that yes, under Dr. Anthony Fauci, the U.S. government was directed to send money to China so that China could use that money to create monster viruses in the lab. For what reason? I don't know. Was it to weaponize them? I don't know. Was it to create some kind of vaccine before a super virus got out? Well, clearly that never happened. So why were they doing this? I don't know. But it's very evident that they were doing it, and it's very evident that Fauci lied about it. And he needs to be held to account, as well as everybody else in his organization. Let's see here. So it's now a matter of certainty that Fauci illegally used and directed U.S. taxpayer money to fund the creation of deadly viruses by the Chinese. The deaths of millions of people are directly due to the criminal activities of Dr. Fauci and his organizations. And they have been trying very hard to cover this up. You actually had a story from earlier in the week that apparently the NIH on their website, on their .gov website, has been altering the definitions of what gain of function is, and that it's only viewable under the Wayback Machine or archive.today. Unfortunately, I did not bring any of those up. I should have, though. Let's see here. So, in case you were, developing coronavirus and killing millions of people around the world and destroying the world economy for 2 years, in case that didn't convince you that Dr. Fauci is a bad dude, we have a late-breaking story from last night, which I guess if you are overly sensitive to animal cruelty, there is no gore in the picture that I'm about to show here, but we have a very horrific story that broke late last night from The Hill. And the title is, from The Hill, bipartisan legislators demand answers from Fauci on, quote, cruel puppy experiments. Now, unfortunately, I wish that this was a unique story, but this is in fact, well, it actually is a unique story about the particular things that they were doing to puppies. The idea that Fauci was experimenting on puppies is actually not unique because they have, there's been several previous stories this year about various experiments the NIH, at the direction of Fauci, have been doing on puppies. But this one was particularly horrific and was a unique puppy torture method that Fauci was engaging in and using your tax dollars to do it. Let's see here. So from The Hill, they say, quote, our investigators show that Fauci's NIH division shipped part of a $375,800 grant to a lab in Tunisia to drug beagles and locked their heads in mesh cages filled with hungry sandflies, and so that the insects could eat them alive, White Coat Waste said. Now, unfortunately, this is a picture of Dr. Fauci torturing these poor dogs by having them be eaten alive by insects. Let's see here. So the Hill says A bipartisan letter demands answers from the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and President Biden's chief medical advisor. House members, most of whom are Republicans, want Fauci to explain himself in response to allegations brought on by the White Coat Waste Project that involves drugging puppies. Allegedly, 44 beagle puppies were used in North Africa laboratory, and some of the dogs had their vocal cords removed so that scientists could work without incessant barking. This is a short article, so we're going to read it in its entirety here. So, a bipartisan letter demands answers from the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and President Biden's chief medical advisor. The White Coat Waste Project, the nonprofit organization that first pointed out that U.S. taxpayers were only being used to fund the controversial Wuhan Institute of Virology, have now turned its sights on Anthony Fauci on another animal testing related matter, infecting dozens of beagles with disease-causing parasites to test an experimental drug on them. House members, most of whom are Republicans, want Fauci to explain himself in response to the allegations brought on by White Coat Waste Project that involved drugging puppies. According to the White Coat Waste Project, the Food and Drug Administration does not require drugs to be tested on dogs, so the group is asking why the need for such testing. White Coat Waste claims that 44 beagle puppies were used in Tunisia, North Africa laboratory, and some of the dogs had their vocal cords removed, allegedly, so that scientists could work without incessant barking. Leading the efforts is Representative Nancy Mace, Republican, writing a letter to the National Institute of Health saying the chordectomies are cruel. I believe the chordectomy is the removal of the vocal cords. I've never read that word before, but that's what I think it means. That the chordectomies are cruel and a reprehensible misuse of taxpayer funds. Quote, our investigators show that Fauci's NIH division shipped part of a $375,000 grant to a lab in Tunisia to drug beagles and lock their heads in mesh cages filled with hungry sandflies so that the insects could eat them alive. White Coat Waste told Changing America. They also locked beagles alone in cages in the desert overnight for 9 consecutive nights to use them as bait to attract infectious sandflies. And then it's got a list of all the representatives that signed on to this letter. So, did Dr. Fauci fund bioweapons research in China that led to the worst pandemic in modern history? I don't know, but the kind of guy that would fund spend almost $400,000 on torturing puppies in one of the most horrific ways imaginable. I would think that funding bioweapons research in China would probably be pretty easy for somebody who could do that to a puppy. Should Fauci go down for the puppy thing, or should Fauci go down for the COVID thing? At this point, I really don't care. Put him in jail. And if you ever had any questions as to whether or not taxation is theft, we got to build the roads and that stuff, if if you didn't pay your taxes, who would torture the puppies? Do you think a private corporation would torture the puppies? Come on, if the government doesn't do it, who's going to do it? Same thing as the roads. If you don't pay the government, who's going to build your roads? Who's going to torture your puppies? All righty. Well, let's move on from Dr. Fauci, who's I hope in 50 years Dr. Fauci's name is remembered as like Dr. Frankenstein, because that's essentially what he is. Or maybe Mendeleev. Alrighty, so our next story is that Biden has appointed an unqualified mental patient to the rank of 4-star general. We can see the evolution of Richard. We have had Richard, who evolved into Rachel, who then evolved into a rather rather striking, a rather high fidelity copy of what I think looks like General Milley. So we got Richard, who transitioned into Rachel, who transitioned into General Milley. Alrighty, because General Milley also has no balls. Biden has appointed Dr. I'm going to dead name, Dr. Richard Levine, 63, as the first ever, quote, female 4-star admiral in charge of the U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps. Richard has no prior military experience. Richard was previously appointed as Biden's health secretary, and before that, he held the position of Pennsylvania's physician general. Dictators, like Joe Biden, often appoint loyalists to lead key positions of power, irregardless of their knowledge or capabilities. That's definitely evident with the current transportation secretary. It is more important to dictators that the leaders of government bureaucracy and departments are loyal to them, and especially those that lead the military absolutely have to be loyal to a dictator. It is not uncommon for certain professionals, such as this is back in our current republic. It's not uncommon in our current republic for professionals such as doctors, priests, or scientists to either join the military or be conscripted in times of war, and they enter the military at a higher rank rather than at an enlisted rank. This would include being enlisted as a captain or a major. The rank ensures that they are paid based on their unique experience and skills. However, they are still required to go through the same training and meet the same physical standards as other military members have to go through when they join. These special conscripts are also not given command of a unit until they have the required training and experience. A surgeon may be given the rank of major, but he would not be placed in charge of a military hospital or be expected to lead the command that controls the military logistics for that hospital, policy, and maintaining all military hospitals. So, what exactly is Richard going to be doing as the head of the U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps? The U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps it consists of 6,000 officers across many medical fields. They are separate from the Navy, though they do have Navy uniforms and ranks. They are primarily responsible for leading the nation's medical response to national crises, natural disasters, and foreign relief. They are the medical ground troops for the CDC, because, the CDC requires ground troops. The NIH. So for the CDC, NIH, and FEMA. So this is the officer corps for the CDC, NIH, and FEMA. So presumably they will be kicking down your door to not shoot your dog, because they're not the FBI or the police, but they will be rather capturing your dog and feeding it to sandflies slowly. Let's hear. So these the members of this corps and the doctors and the members of these corps can be deployed in response to public health emergencies. So the question is it really wise to entrust the kind of militant doctor corps? Is it really wise to entrust the leadership of that to somebody who has a verified mental problem in that they don't know that they have gender dysphoria, which in the DSM-4 was listed as a mental condition? Probably not wise. Also, I find it interesting because there is the efficacy of the rule is probably debatable by people who are not me, but there is a condition in the military where if you have PTSD to a certain extent, you can be taken off of active duty and not given leadership roles or forced into medical retirement if you've got PTSD to a certain point. Now, what's interesting, I was trying to find a statement from Richard/Rachel if they've ever made a public statement about this. I was not able to find one yet, but I imagine it's out there because the trans community tends to talk about PTSD very flippantly, and that literally anything can give them PTSD. So it'd be interesting to see if Rachel's ever made a statement that he has PTSD, because that would actually disqualify him from serving in the position that he's in, technically. So I guess that remains to be seen. But if you ever hear that Rachel Levine said something about PTSD, then that's an immediate disqualification for her serving as a 4-star general. I think that it's this is kind of one of the big things that's with the failing of the country is this is an attempt by the Biden administration to unravel as many cultural institutions in America as possible. So this was obviously an attempt by the Biden administration because, does Biden really care that he appointed a tranny to be the head of this, or, appointed that to be the first apparently female 4-star general, which, I guess that's a win for women everywhere, that the first woman 4-star general is actually a man. Was that Biden? No, probably not. Did he put his stamp on it? Yeah, but somebody else in the administration is pulling the strings on this one and wanted this to happen. And they wanted this to happen because they wanted to make a mockery of the military. They wanted to make a mockery of the idea of being a 4-star general, which, I don't know if they really need to do that because I think that General Milley's been doing a pretty good job of that himself. But that is the point of this. And that's been the point of a lot of the things that the administration's been doing, is to make a mockery of once respected American institutions. Let's see here. So that brings us to our next story. So this Biden appointee to 4-star general obviously meant to make a mockery of American institutions, as is the case with Levine. But other appointments that Biden has been making are really more about naked corruption and leveraging political power for money. That is the case with our next story about Attorney General Merrick Garland, who is simultaneously making a mockery of the position of Attorney General in the DOJ and also profiting from it. So some background before we get into this story. I want you guys to kind of generally remember all the stories that we've heard over the past summer about school board meetings and parents being upset about various critical race theory trainings, critical race theory praxis in the schools, various aggressive LGBT pushing, certain books with pedophilic themes and scenes in them. That there's been a lot of concern about that with parents this year as they've realized what has been going on, what their children have been taught. One of the things COVID did for us as a society is that parents were able to see what their children were doing at school because the children were at home learning about it on their computer, and the parents could just walk by and see what was going on with the webcam. And so a lot of parents have had issues with that and have been attending school board meetings en masse to complain about this and to hopefully get their schools back on track so their children are not being taught inappropriate things. Last week, we covered a story about a parent that was designated a domestic terrorist by the media and was removed from a school board meeting in handcuffs after he was so audacious as to point out that his daughter had been raped by a boy in a skirt at the school, and the school was attempting to cover it up. How dare he? Let's see here. So this push from parents to get their schools back on track, to push out the wokeness out of the schools, to stop using the schools as indoctrination facilities and making them dangerous for their children, that has not gone unnoticed by the various interest groups pushing for these woke issues and dangerous policies. One of those particular interest groups would be the National School Board Association, which is a lobbyist group representing, you guessed it, school boards. All right, so before we get into Merrick Garland, we're going to read through a couple of the events that led to what I'm about to talk about. So Merrick Garland this week had a hearing with Congress about the issue we're going to talk about. But before he had that hearing, there was a few events that we're going to read from direct sources. So Let's see here. So at the beginning of the month, or at the end of last month, the NSBA, the National School Board Association, sent out a letter to the Biden administration, and it's a little bit of a long letter, but we're gonna zoom in and read just a little bit of it, kind of the key section, if I can find it. Let me do a quick find here. There we go. Alrighty, so on page 2, you guys can go find this. I'm on the nsba.org website. So this is the letter that they sent to the Biden administration. It's on their website. You can go find the full letter on your own time if you would like. The section I'm going to be reading is at the end of page 2. So the NSBA says, quote, and this is in response to parents actually attending their school board meetings nationwide. How dare they? NSBA says, quote, as these acts of malice, violence, and threats against public school officials have increased, the classification of these heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. Oh my goodness. As such, the NSBA requests a joint expedited review by the U.S. Department of Justice, Education, and Homeland Security, along with the appropriate training, coordination, investigation, and enforcement mechanisms from the FBI, including any technical assistance necessary from state and local. Did I misread this, or are they typing this out wrong? Let's see here. Including any technical assistance from, and yeah, they did miss a word there. From and state and local coordination with its National Security Branch and Counterterrorism Division, as well as any other federal agency with relevant judicial authority and oversight. They basically just want the kitchen sink thrown at this. Because as they say, parents attending school board meetings is possibly a form of domestic terrorism and hate crime. How dare you take an interest in your children? Additionally, the NSBA requests that such a review examine appropriate enforcement actions against these crimes and acts of violence under the Gun-Free School Zone Act and the Patriot Act in regards to domestic terrorism, the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, and Violence Interference with Federally Protected Rights Statute, the Conspiracy Against Rights Statute, an executive order to enforce all applicable federal laws for the protection of students and public school district personnel, and any related measure as the threats grow and news of extremist hate organizations showing up at school board meetings is being reported. This is a critical time for a proactive approach to deal with the difficult issues. Let's see here. So, basically, they want every possible federal agency to just come down like a hammer on parents attending school board meetings. Again, this letter is from the National School Board Association. This letter is in response to, again, the flood of parents angrily attending their school board meetings over the last year. Why are they angry? They're angry because their children are being taught critical race theory things again, this is critical race theory. It's not my belief, but this is what critical race theory says, that blacks are inherently inferior. And because they're inferior, white people need to step back and give blacks a special hand up. That is a critical tenet of critical race theory. Parents obviously are upset that their children are being taught these racist principles. You have a just onslaught of inappropriate quote-unquote sexual education being done in schools, where there have been several books listed that various school boards and school districts are using that have books that are being recommended to children that are like 6th grade and under that have explicit sex scenes in them. There's been several of those shown at school board meetings with scenes of pedophilia that are so graphic that the school board said that you're not allowed to read this out loud in a public hearing, to which the parent responded, are you kidding me? You're sending this home with my daughter. Why can't I read it back to you? if it's so bad, why would you send it home with their daughter? You've had several instances of high schools assigning pornography reviews to high school students who are obviously underage, and under various U.S. laws, it's illegal for them to view pornography or to be given pornography to them by an adult. And then you've got the push for this whole transgender movement in the schools, where schools are assisting children in hiding transition pre-op to their parents and encouraging it in them. You've got situations where schools are putting biological males, which I've been told I'm not supposed to say biological males, males with females in locker rooms, which has resulted in dangerous situations for many girls. As I just referenced the story from last week, the parent whose daughter was raped violently by a male that was allowed into the girls' space by the school. So obviously there's multiple reasons why parents have taken a heavy interest in their school board meetings this past year to try and prevent some of these leftist woke things from happening in their schools and to protect their children. And the National School Board Association is concerned about this, and they're so concerned that they think that parents who don't want their children to be exposed to pornography or raped by trannies, that is somehow a form of domestic terrorism worthy of using the Patriot Act against them and gearing up the FBI to prevent them from, I guess, protecting their children. So in response to this, this letter was sent on, let's see here. This letter was sent to the Biden administration on the 29th of September, so late last month. And a mere 5 days later, Merrick Garland, who's the current Attorney General, responded on October 4th. How nice of him. Again, this is from justice.gov. You guys can go find Merrick Garland's full memo on your own time. But he did this on October 4th, which was 5 days after the National School Board Association sent their letter requesting that the FBI and DOJ bring down the hammer on parents attending their local school board meetings. Merrick Garland responded with this memo saying, we're going to read just the last part here. Coordination and partnership with local law enforcement is critical to the implementing these measures for the benefit of our nation's nearly 14,000 public school districts. To this end, I am directing the Federal Bureau of Investigation, working with each United States attorney, to convene meetings with federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial leaders in each federal judicial district within 30 days of the issuance of this memorandum. These meetings will facilitate the discussions of strategies for addressing threats against public school administrators, board members, teachers, and staff, and will openly dedicate lines of communication for threat reporting and assessment. So, key part is this last sentence here, where this memo from the Attorney General, from Merrick Garland, directing the FBI to meet with local law enforcement for all 14,000 public school districts, with just the assumption that it is true that there are threats against school board members, that there are threats against school administrators, and that this is a potential domestic terrorism situation. He's just accepting that premise 5 days after the NSBA sent a letter saying, hey, we think that parents attending a school board meeting could be a form of domestic terrorism. We'd like the FBI to investigate it. And 5 days later, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, is directing the FBI to investigate the things that the NSBA was concerned about, just assuming the premise that, yeah, this must be domestic terrorism. Why else would a parent go to a school board meeting? So, because this seems a little weird, there was a hearing about it. The Congress was concerned that this was perhaps an inappropriate use of Merrick Garland's position. And so they had a hearing about it. And we're going to watch a few clips from that hearing. And I just read, I really wanted to read out to you these primary sources before we watched these clips for the hearing, so that you had full awareness of what was going on. It wasn't, I'm just telling you about it. We actually read the NSBA letter that initiated this. Then we read Merrick Garland's official response 5 days later. And then now we're going to watch a hearing where Merrick Garland is responding to criticism of this exchange he had with them. So you guys are getting the full context here. Can't say I'm leaving anything out. Let's see here. So let's watch this first clip. It's a little bit long, but I want to play it all in its entirety because it's a pretty good exchange and it shows a lot.
Johnson of Louisiana.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney General, millions of Americans are deeply concerned today that instead of addressing the most pressing issues facing our country, we're watching the Biden-Garland Justice Department be weaponized, that you are using your authorities now to advance far-left policies and attack Republican-led state actions and erode constitutional norms. The most recent case in point has been brought up this morning. Your memorandum directing the FBI and other Department of Justice officials to get involved in local school board debates. It concerns us that it was issued just 5 days after the National School Board Association sent a letter to President Biden which referred to concerned parents as the equivalent of, quote, domestic terrorists and perpetrators of hate crimes, unquote. Given the timing of all this, your memo appears to have been motivated by politics more than any pressing federal law enforcement need. This is concerning to us, and it's worthy of investigation. It also concerns us that your actions may have been motivated by your family's financial stake in this issue. Published reports show that your son-in-law co-founded a company called Panorama Education. We now know that that company publishes and sells critical race theory and so-called anti-racism materials to schools across the country. And it works with school districts nationwide to obtain and analyze data on students, often without parental consent. On its website, the company brags that it's surveyed more than 13 million students in the U.S. It's raised $76 million from powerful investors, including people like Mark Zuckerberg, just since 2017. My first question is this: are you familiar with Title V of the Code of Federal Regulations, which addresses the rules of impartiality for executive branch employees and officials?
I am very familiar with it, and I want to be clear once again.
I just want to make sure that we're staying caught up with this. So just to clarify, so what was just revealed is that Merrick Garland has a family member who runs a company that creates critical race theory based educational material, quote unquote, that is dispersed out to schools. So if you have nationwide parents no longer wanting critical race theory in their schools, well, Merrick Garland's family member who runs a company that creates critical race theory materials, well, they would lose a lot of sales. So that is what's being pointed out right now. And the statute that was just brought up is a ethics statute where a government official making a decision in which it might affect them financially or a family member financially, they're required to have that be reviewed by an ethics committee to make sure that they are not engaging in any kind of corrupt practices. So basically, just to clarify, Merrick Garland's memo directed the FBI to prepare investigations against parents who did not want critical race theory in their schools. And at the same time, Merrick Garland has a family member who has a company which produces critical race theory educational materials. So that could be an ethics violation. Let's see how Merrick Garland responds.
Branch employees and officials.
I am very familiar with it, and I want to be clear once again that there's nothing in this memorandum which has any effect on the kinds of curriculums that are taught or the ability of parents to complain about the kinds of...
I understand your position on the free speech of parents.
It is
wait just a minute. The question is, the thing that has concerned many of those parents that are showing up at these school board meetings, the very basis of their objection and their vigorous debate, as you mentioned earlier, is the curricula, the very curricula that your son-in-law is selling. So to millions of Americans, I mean, my constituents, I was home all weekend, I got an earful about this. They're very concerned about that. Subpart E of that federal regulation says an employee of the executive branch is discouraged from engaging in conduct that's likely to affect the financial interest of someone close to them. Your son-in-law, your daughter, clearly meets that definition. And so the question is, Did you follow that regulation? Did you have the appropriate agency ethic official look into this? Did you seek guidance as the federal regulation requires?
This memorandum is aimed at violence and threats of violence.
Understand that, but did you seek, did you seek ethics counsel before you issued a letter that directly relates to the financial interest of your family? Yes or no?
This memorandum does not relate to the financial interests of anyone. It's against.
I take that as a no. I take that as a no.
Memorandum is against violence and threats of violence.
Will you, Mr. Attorney General, will you commit to having the appropriate ethics designee review the case and make the results public?
This memorandum is aimed at violence and threats of violence.
I understand your talking point. You're not answering my question, Mr. Attorney General. With all due respect, will you submit to an ethics review of this matter, yes or no?
There's no company in America, or hopefully no law-abiding citizen in America, who believes that threats of violence should not be prevented. There are no conflicts of interest that anyone could have.
According to you, but sir, with due respect, that's the purpose of the federal regulation. We need objective third parties to review our activities. You don't get to make that decision yourself. It doesn't matter. You're the chief law enforcement of this country. This raises questions in the minds of millions of Americans, and your impartiality is being called into question. Why would you not submit to a simple ethics review of that?
I am exquisitely aware of the ethics requirements.
But you're not following them.
I have followed them and lived with them for the last 25 years.
Did you seek an ethics review of this or not?
I'm going to say again, there are no conflicts of interest involved when the Justice Department...
Okay. According to you, I got that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but you are not respecting our rules, our constitutional norms, and the federal law that directly applies to your activities. This is a great concern. This is why people are losing faith in our institutions. They're losing faith in this Department of Justice. And you and I both know, as constitutional attorneys, that if the people lose their faith in our system of justice, if they lose their faith in the idea that justice is blind, that there are not two standards, that there's one standard of the law, and that everybody...
Time of the gentleman has expired. Would the Attorney General like to respond to the innuendo?
No, all I can say is I completely agree that the rule of law and respect for it is essential. And I will always do everything possible to uphold that and to avoid any kind of conflict of interest.
But you will not submit to an ethics inquiry.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Well, I would just
Time of the gentleman has
It wasn't innuendo, it was a question.
Thank you.
It was a question.
Question is
the editorial comments from the chair about other people's questions is not appreciated by this side of the aisle.
Mr. Johnson of Georgia.
Alrighty. Well, that was an interesting exchange. So that adds some flavor to the previous the previous primary sources we just reviewed, where again we saw the NSBA very concerned that parents don't want critical race theory in their schools. There's kind of this other narrative here where we've now found out that Merrick Garland's son-in-law, the husband of his daughter, which I imagine that father is probably rather fond of their children, especially their daughters. His daughter's family's well-being would be directly related to how well her husband's doing, and how well her husband's doing is dependent on whether or not critical race theory is accepted by schools nationwide. He's directly profiting from having critical race theory in the school system. And now you've got parents nationwide saying, hey, we don't want critical race theory in the school system, which is threatening the money that Merrick Garland's daughter could possibly have. And so now Merrick Garland has put out a memo earlier this month saying, hey, we would like to direct the FBI to investigate these parents who don't want critical race theory in the schools. We're considering that to be violent. And we'd like them to look into this to stop that, because, you know, if we get too many parents with these ideas that they don't want critical race theory in their schools, well, my daughter's going to make a whole lot less money. That is what the conflict of interest here is. And Merrick Garland should have a ethics committee review this, and I think that he doesn't want it to because, well, he probably won't like the results of that. So that was a pretty good exchange. To see another exchange from the same hearing, we're going to watch a few clips, not nearly as long as the last one, a few clips from Jim Jordan also questioning what is going on here. So we're going to watch a little clip from the beginning and a little clip from the end. So I'll pause it and I'll jump around a little bit. This is Jim Jordan at the same hearing questioning Merrick Garland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. March 25th, Joe Biden criticizes the Georgia election law. 3 months later, the Department of Justice challenges it. September 1st, Joe Biden criticizes the new pro-life law in Texas. 8 days later, the Department of Justice challenges it. September 29th, the political organization asked President Biden to involve the FBI in local school board issues. 5 days later, the Department of Justice does just that. Mr. Attorney General, was it just a coincidence that your memo came 5 days after the National School Boards Association letter went to the president?
So we are concerned about violence and threats of violence across the board against school officials, against
Is there any connection, Mr. Attorney General, with the school board letter and then 5 days later your memo to regarding school board issues?
Obviously, the letter, which was public and asked for assistance from the Justice Department, was brought to our attention, and it's a relevant factor in.
Who gave you the letter?
I'm sorry?
How'd you become aware of the letter? Who gave it to you?
I read about the letter in the news. That's how I read about it.
With the White House.
All right, so we've just established as Jim Jordan's pointing out, the quick turnaround time for this letter coming out, and Merrick Garland apparently read about it, just happened to read about it in a newspaper, and then issued a memo relating to the exact same thing 5 days later. So we just watched the first minute of this clip. I'm gonna zoom off to about 4 minutes 14 seconds here, but I want you to remember that what Merrick Garland just said is, I happened upon this letter by reading it in a newspaper. Nobody gave it to him. Nobody prompted him to read it. It was just a lucky happenstance that he read it soon after it was put out. So keeping that in mind, we're going to zoom off here to 4 minutes, 14 seconds, because now Jim Jordan is going to ask, why, what is the evidence? And I had said this a little bit ago when we were reading the letter. What is the evidence that there is actually violence at these school board meetings, that there is actually a terroristic threat at these school board meetings? Why would Merrick Garland put out a memo stating that there's violence that the FBI needs to start investigating? Well, let's listen to what Merrick Garland has to say.
And teachers.
First sentence of your memo, very first sentence, you said, in recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, threats of violence.
Yes.
When did you first review the data showing this so-called disturbing uptick?
So I read the letter, and we have been seeing over time threats.
Whoa. I didn't ask you. So you read the letter. That's your source?
So let me be clear. This is not a prosecution or an investigation.
Is there some study, some effort, some investigation someone did that said there's been a disturbing uptick, or you just take the words of the National School Board Association?
Well, the National School Board Association, which represents thousands of school boards and school board members, says that there are these kind of threats. When we read in the newspapers reports of threats of violence, when that is in the context of threats of violence.
The source for this, for the very first line in your memo.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Was the School Boards Association letter.
Expired, Mr. Deutsch. Jordan.
All right, so to recap that, the National School Board Association puts out this letter claiming parents complaining about leftist ideology in the school system, that's a form of domestic terrorism and hate crime worthy of bringing down the fury of the FBI, the NSA, the Domestic Terrorist Acts and Patriot Act and all that stuff, bringing down the fury of the federal government onto the heads of these parents who do not want leftist things in their school boards or in their school systems. National School Board Association saying that parents who don't want woke ideology in their schools are domestic terrorists. You have Merrick Garland's son-in-law, who profits from a company that produces woke leftist ideology for schools. And then Merrick Garland puts out a letter, a memorandum, directing the FBI to investigate a spike in terrorist activity at school board meetings. And his only evidence that the terrorist activity at school board meetings even exists is this letter from the National School Board Association and other media outlets. And I think we know probably what the problem with the FBI or the Attorney General citing media reports of quote unquote violence, what the problem with that is. That seems to be a little problematic because as you may know, the media is a little bit biased. Anytime a parent doesn't want woke leftist ideology being taught to their kids or indoctrinated into their kids, the media is going to say that's a terrorist activity, right? Anything that's not leftist is terrorism. So I hopefully I've drawn the narrative here. If you can't see what the problems with some of these things, I don't know if I can really explain it any further. Obviously, a conflict of interest. Obviously, Merrick Garland his son-in-law and his daughter are directly profiting off of the critical race theory and woke ideology in the school system. Merrick Garland has the ability to direct the FBI to put a stop to this, and he seems to be interested in doing just that. Let's see here. We've got another clip from Jim Jordan here where he kind of recaps it as well, and he does a much better job of recapping it than I do, I'm sure. But we'll let Jim Jordan go for another minute or so here on a different clip.
Gordon, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chairman just said the Trump DOJ was political and went after their opponents. Are you kidding me? 3 weeks ago, the National School Board Association writes President Biden asking him to involve the FBI in local school board matters. 5 days later, the Attorney General of the United States does just that. Does exactly what a political organization asked to be done. 5 days. We've sent, Republicans on this committee have sent the Attorney General 13 letters in the last 6 months. It takes weeks and months to get a response. 8 of the letters, we've got nothing. They just gave us the finger, said, we're not going to get back to you. And all our letters were actually sent to the Attorney General. Here's a letter sent to someone else asking for a specific thing to be done, and in 5 days, the Attorney General does it. Here's what the October 4th memo said. Quote, I'm directing the FBI to convene meetings with local leaders. These meetings will open dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting. Dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting. A snitch line on parents. Started 5 days after a left-wing political organization asked for it. That's not political. I don't know what is. Where's the dedicated lines of communication with...
We'll go back and kind of rewatch him in a second here, but I want to point out, again, this was Jim Jordan's opening statement. As we found out in the clip that we just watched, which would happen later from now, they have this snitch line for being able to report parents who don't want leftist ideology in their school systems. You can now report them to the FBI on a terrorist hotline, and the only evidence that terrorism even exists, as Merrick Garland, we just saw him admit, his only evidence that it even exists is from this NSBA letter and from media reporting. This is what a politicized dictator looks like. Dictatorship looks like. You use the power of the state in a political way to go after your political enemies and criminalize any kind of political dissent. That's what this looks like. We'll let Jim Jordan finish this out here.
A snitch line on parents started 5 days after a left-wing political organization asked for it. That's not political. I don't know what is. Where's the dedicated lines of communication with local leaders regarding our southern border? Something that, frankly, is a federal matter. Where's the dedicated lines of communication on violent crime in our cities? Violent crime that has went up in every major urban area where Democrats have defunded the police. Nope, can't do that. Can't do that. The Biden Justice Department is going to go after parents who object to some racist, hate America curriculum. Nope, can't focus on the southern...
All right, he goes on to talk about other things that you can't get hotlines for, but it's good. I recommend watching, but we don't have time to watch through the whole thing. Again, the quick recap of this, the long and the short of it is, if you want to sum up the story in a couple of sentences, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, his family makes money off of selling critical race praxis to your school system, and Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has just directed the FBI to monitor parents who don't like that. That's pretty good. That's pretty good hustle he's got there. I'll definitely say that. Alrighty, our next story here is a little bit of an old story, but it was recently, I guess, rediscovered. China, a couple of months ago, launched a supersonic orbital cruise missile, which is kind of scary. So in August of this year, China launched a nuclear-capable supersonic orbital cruise missile named Long March. That's not ominous. I'm assuming that the name was actually like unpronounceable because it was probably in Chinese. But I assume the translation was Long March. The missile, or quote unquote vehicle, as they might call it, was fired and traveled around the Earth in more than one full rotation and landed 20 miles from its intended target. China has had supersonic missiles for years now. They are dangerous as they are able to defeat every publicly declassified anti-ballistic missile system that we have. There is some possibilities that there's classified systems that can intercept it. We can only hope. And once fired, a hypersonic missile would provide no time for the target to escape. The U.S. also has supersonic missiles. These missiles aren't only fast, but they travel in unpredictable and dynamic flight patterns. Yes, most of the known anti-ballistic missile technology is based on ICBMs, which they go up into space on a parabolic path and then fall back to their target. And the flight trajectory that they take is predictable given very few variables. And so it's easier for intercept technology to intercept those missiles and blow them up. The supersonic missiles, they can take more unpredictable paths, and they can take paths that aren't limited to the parabolic trajectories of ICBMs. So most of our stuff right now, most of the declassified anti-missile technology is based on targeting ballistic missiles that are going to be on their parabolic trajectory. If there's a missile coming in from a different trajectory, well, we don't have anything pointed in that direction, in theory. So that's the problem with hypersonic missiles, or supersonic missiles, whatever they are. Let's see here. So the missile test, China's missile test, showed a huge leap forward for their missile capability. It demonstrated advanced evasive maneuvering, guidance, and relatively accurate. 20 miles, that's probably not going to cut it in horseshoes and hand grenades, but it's pretty close, especially when you had the missile loop around the world. They can certainly figure out how to get that done better. But just the fact they were able to come close is pretty dangerous and scary. Let's see here. So the accuracy too, this was a marked improvement from their previous attempts. So that also is concerning that they're getting better and better at it. Each test is also an opportunity for them to fix errors and improve future interactions of their systems. According to a report from the Financial Times, U.S. intelligence agencies deny knowing that China had developed this weapon, though they probably knew about it. It's probably just classified. Though, if you might remember a story from way back during the Obama administration, when Hillary Clinton's email server accidentally or on purpose leaked out a copy of our active undercover agents in China, and China killed like hundreds of secret agents in like a month. And we basically lost a gigantic portion of our on-the-ground intelligence in China during the Obama administration. We're talking about intelligence assets that have been undercover for probably decades, if not lifetimes. And you can't just rebuild that kind of intelligence infrastructure overnight. I mean, it would probably take another generation to rebuild that. So thanks, Hillary. So it's possible that we actually didn't know that this was happening, since we have lost a lot of our intelligence capabilities in China, thanks to the Obama-Hillary administration. Let's see here. So the U.S. government did not publicly acknowledge or respond to the launch when it happened. This is also the second supersonic missile that China has tested this year. I wonder why they feel so. I wonder why they feel so bold and confident in testing things like this now. Is it maybe because they got a wink and a nod and an agreement from General Milley that they could pretty much do whatever they want without fear, and that if the U.S. was upset about something and was planning on attacking, that Milley had given China a commitment a vow that he would betray his country and give China advanced warning of any strikes that the U.S. might be having? Could that be why they're feeling so cavalier about their missile tests? I don't know. It's just a theory. Let's hear it. The Biden administration did not respond to the first missile fire in July either. That is why why was the Biden administration silent on the issue of our greatest adversary testing nuclear missiles only 2 weeks after threatening Australia with a nuclear strike? Is it probably because, as Biden said earlier in the town hall that we just watched at the beginning of the show, Biden had mentioned that no one has spent more time talking to Xi Jinping than he has, and I don't think he's going to get much disagreement from anybody. I think everybody agrees that, yeah, he's probably spent a lot of time talking to Xi Jinping. And, what are they talking about, I think, is what the question is, not how much time have they spent talking to each other. Let's see here. So it's possible that the Biden administration's silence has something to do with our own military capabilities. Last Thursday, the U.S. military scrapped a scheduled test of our own supersonic orbital cruise missile due to faulty rocket motors. Womp womp. Don't worry, our military rocket techs were up to date on their diversity training, though, so nothing to worry there. The launch was canceled only hours after a military press release boasting the capabilities of the U.S.'s, quote, Dark Eagle missile that apparently has a few missing feathers on its wing. Some people might say that Biden's lack of response and failed response showed weakness and invites further provocation. I would say that, or I wouldn't necessarily say that, but some people, they might say that. Actually, I would say that. You also have kind of, again, as I said at the beginning of the show, every week, unfortunately, is just documenting which specific parts of America are collapsing this week, because generally we've just been on this fast track slide downhill for the last 9 months, just kind of relentless. So this week we've had a lot of military failures and embarrassment, or at least this month, this kind of period. We've got China really showing us up with hypersonic nuclear missile tech. We've got us not able to respond with equivalent tech that, because we've got faulty rocket motors for whatever reason. Probably the rocket motors probably made in China. You've got the Biden administration making a mockery of what it means to have rank in the military by appointing a mentally challenged, not health expert to the rank of 4-star, just to make a mockery of it. We also have another story that I didn't have time to gather much information on, but we had a story of a Navy destroyer that basically burned. I don't know. How does a ship burn? It doesn't burn to the ground. I guess it burned to the ocean floor because the Navy personnel on board did not know how to activate the fire suppression system. And so they had no choice but to abandon ship and let it burn because they didn't know how to operate their own ship. This has been this is a condition for the Navy that we know about. There was a report released a few months ago now that showed the Navy was horrifically underprepared and undertrained for even basic combat. If we were to go to war, the Navy is essentially useless right now. There was a report that came out a few months ago that detailed the just absolute off-the-charts abundance of diversity and woke-related training sessions, and essentially no training on how to operate ships. They had investigations that showed bridge crew on many classes of ship had no idea how to handle themselves on the bridge during a combat situation, or how to operate basic buttons and dials and settings on their station. And that's very obvious in the story that this destroyer burned to the ground because they didn't know how to activate this fire suppression system. That would be, you would think that would be a basic function that you'd be trained on. And I guess not. But, similar to the rocket motor, why did the rocket motor fail? I don't know. Why did the ship burn to the ground? I don't know. Do you have your latest NPC update from the critical race theory training? Yeah, of course they do. So again, just the Biden administration making an absolute mockery out of the military. And I think, as was noted, the last few months, is that unfortunately, it's not that the military is suddenly becoming problematic in either its capabilities in, protecting America and the types of let me go back here. I don't want to get too, poetic in my language. I want to be a little bit more specific in this. We've unfortunately found out this year that the integrity of the military leadership, that it's not recently become lower, but it's been like that for a while. It's just suddenly been revealed that the leadership for the military is low integrity and very, very political. We've seen that come out with a lot of these hearings where several of the generals have stated a over-reliance on critical race theory, that they want to have all the troops be reading Ibram X. Kendi, that they think there's a problem with white rage, that they want to do all these things and all the social stuff with the military. And that's not something that just happened. They're just comfortable being out of the closet about it, so to speak. So that's something that we've learned this year, is the weakness of the military leadership is far beyond what we initially thought that it was, last year. But that's not to say that it was strong last year. It's just they were better at hiding it last year. So that's one part, is that we've seen the weakness in the military's leadership has been revealed, which is scary. But we've also seen revealed, not that it just happened, but revealed the weakness in the general troops in all the branches. Not, is it their fault? Not necessarily. It has to do with their training, the training being pushed down from the weak brass. And to the extent that you do have enlisted soldiers in all the branches that are there to do the right thing, to be strong, to defend America, you've got, at every turn, the Biden administration doing its best to get them out, to force them to retire, to fire them, to do whatever they can to make sure only the weakest are left in the military. You've got this reduction of physical fitness standards, this reduction in intelligence standards and training standards. This, again, everything that the Navy was doing with all of this diversity training, telling them, read Ibram X. Kendi. It's a good book. It's, the problem with white rage. All of this stuff. And again, some of it is new, but most of it is stuff that we just weren't aware of. And it's very scary and unfortunate that the military has been that hollowed out, way more than what we even thought it was. And this all kind of comes to a head this week, where it's like, oh, wow, China launched out this hypersonic nuclear missile that can defeat all of our unclassified military or missile defense technology. And we thought we'd show them up with our own hypersonic missile, but we can't get it up. It's got maybe need to throw some blue pills on it. But we can't get our missile off the ground because there's something wrong with the rocket engine. And we've got, destroyers, Navy ships that aren't even combat, just burning to the ground for no reason because we don't know how to turn on the sprinkler system. You would think that a ship being out on the water, that, it'd probably be pretty easy to put out a fire, but I guess not. And this is just again, part of the, reveal of America sliding downhill. I'm just here to tell you each week which part of it slid downhill the most this week, unfortunately. And unfortunately this week it was again the military, which unfortunately has been on the table for the last several weeks as being the thing most quickly declining. And all of this is meant to demoralize you, continue to demoralize members of the military who are there for the right reasons, who want to defend America, who want to protect the Constitution and defend, liberty and all that stuff. It's meant to demoralize them. It's meant to demoralize you as a citizen. And it's meant to make sure that the military is only filled with people who are politically aligned with the Democrats, with leftist ideology, because their plan is, you don't really got to guess what their plan is. You can just look at every other authoritarian regime in history. And, it's funny. It's funny. The left would say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory that, you would think that the left wants to use the military against the civilian population. Why is it a conspiracy theory? I'm really just looking at history and extrapolating from the hundreds of examples of a leftist ideology taking over a country and then using the military against the civilian population. That seems to be pretty obvious. As far off the rails as I got this there, bringing it back, it's problematic that China is rising and America appears to be falling. And it appears that this is an engineered situation. Milley, obviously, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Milley has made a commitment to China that he will give China advanced warning of U.S. troop deployments if we're going to attack China. Joe Biden has been beholden to China for decades at this point. He has dozens of family ties to China financially. There's a story I'll probably cover next week that was breaking late this week that Hunter Biden's China business connections with Chinese energy, and then also in Europe with Burisma, that the savings and checkings accounts that his money was getting funneled into were actually joint checking accounts. And it was Hunter Biden joint with Joe Biden. Joe Biden wasn't just getting money through his son. Joe Biden had access to accounts directly that were being funneled by Burisma, being funneled into by Chinese diplomats and businessmen, directly into an account that Joe Biden had direct access to. It's no longer this 1 degree of separation where Hunter Biden is kind of the front man for Joe Biden. There's now breaking evidence that we'll go into this more thoroughly next week, that Joe Biden had direct access to these accounts that were getting money from the Chinese government, from the Ukraine government, from Russian government. So, is all of this stuff by design, or is it all an accident? Well, kind of like Merrick Garland sicking the FBI on parents who are trying to stop the sales of his son-in-law's business. Is it intentional corruption, or is it just the appearance of corruption? And I say it doesn't really matter because it's bad policy. It's bad policy. Alrighty. Our final story is a bit of a knee slapper. I think it's funny. Some people think it's not funny, but I'm not some people. I will clarify why I think it's funny, though. As you guys may have heard, Alec Baldwin has made good on his threat to finally shoot somebody. He's been talking about it for quite a long time on Twitter. And he finally shot and killed somebody. I wasn't really thinking I was waiting for this. I don't think a lot of people were. A lot of people didn't take him seriously. Apparently they should have. But Alec Baldwin for years has been talking about how he thinks certain people need to be shot, how he thinks people on the right need to be killed, how he thinks that certain right-wing politicians should be shot. And he finally shot and killed somebody himself. So he wasn't just talking about it. I guess this is one of those warning signs, right? Where they're always talking about and fantasizing about killing people. And then when they finally do, everyone's like, hey, why didn't the FBI sweep in and notice all these signs? I would say that Alec Baldwin finally killing somebody is, I would say there's a lot of signs along the way that he had wanted to kill somebody. Now, the reason why I think this is funny is because it's Alec Baldwin. And if somebody deserves to be in a situation where they are going to go to jail for murder, it's definitely Alec Baldwin. Now, what's not funny is a person that he killed and wounded. He killed one person and wounded another. And all of my joking and jest about the situation is not directed at her. The loss of life here is extremely tragic. That she died, that she had to die to satisfy Baldwin's, I guess, ego and idiocy, and to teach him a lesson about gun safety. That's horrific and terrible and sad for her. None of my joking or malice is directed at her. Only mourning and best wishes to her family. But as for Alec Baldwin, so Alec Baldwin is known for saying that people who don't agree with his far left politics should be harmed and shot. Perhaps we should have taken him more seriously, as it turns out that he shot 2 people last Thursday on the set of a movie that he was acting and producing and directing called Rust. Okay, well, Baldwin, well, I don't know. I don't know if we know that he meant to shoot somebody or not. There's not been an investigation into it quite yet, or at least not the finalized investigation. So I don't want to say that he didn't mean to shoot her. We don't know. I don't know. Did you interview Alec Baldwin? Because I sure didn't. So we don't know if he meant to shoot her or not. But either way, whether he meant to shoot his camera lady and injure his co-producer, it doesn't really matter because he shot them and it's his fault. And I'm going to get to why in a second, but here's what happened. So a few hours before Alec Baldwin shot and murdered somebody, a large portion of the production crew on his film walked off the job in protest of unsafe working conditions. Wow, that is some synchronicity right there. The working conditions were so unsafe, they said, that they were walking off the job in protest, and hours later, they would be it would be confirmed in fact that it was dangerous to work on set. The strike may have been planned by union leaders, and reportedly at least one of the crew members cited gun safety concerns as the reason why. Other reports seem to confirm this concern, as there were reportedly 3 other negligent discharges reported to have occurred on set earlier that week. Wow. Thursday afternoon, the onset armorer. Okay, sorry. Thursday afternoon, the on-set armorer, so the guy that was the armorer for the cast, the person who inspects and provides the weapons and ammo for the actors, had left 3 loaded guns in a cart. An assistant director had picked up one of these guns without confirming whether it was the correct weapon or ammo and handed it to Baldwin. He then handed it, when he handed it to Baldwin, he reportedly said that it was a cold gun, meaning that it was safe and loaded with blanks, which is, not necessarily true, because loaded with blanks still puts out a pretty good pressure wave, and so it's not necessarily safe. Let's see here. So one of the things I found interesting about this story, and I'm sure you guys have too if you've seen this, is that the media in headlines keeps calling it a prop gun that fired a live bullet. Do you know what they call a prop gun that's capable of firing a real bullet? They typically call those guns. Now, you might be able to have a real gun that fires blank ammo, but that doesn't make the gun a prop. Now, they do have rubber guns that are actually just fully cast rubber in the shape of a gun. That is a prop gun. But a gun that is capable of firing a projectile is not a prop. It's a gun. And I think part of the reason why you're seeing all this media blast, blasting from the media, all these headlines, hundreds of headlines saying prop gun, prop gun, prop gun. I think that's them trying to get out ahead of the situation on Alec Baldwin's behalf by saying, well, why should he expect a prop gun to fire a real bullet? Well, because you wouldn't, but it wasn't a prop gun. The idea that it was a prop gun that he fired is just false. So there's been a few stories that have come out as to what exactly was happening at the time that he shot the gun and murdered somebody. It's not been confirmed, but a few of the stories seem to have the same ending, in that Alec Baldwin was told by one of the other producers, hey, we want to retake this shoot. And then he said something to the effect of, what if I shot you? Pointed the gun at them and pulled the trigger. At which point the camera lady and I believe one of his co-producers were shot, with the camera lady being killed and the other producer being wounded. So, let's see here. So, if that's true, either way, he was pointing a gun at somebody and pulled the trigger. Now, there's some people trying to say, oh, well, it was the armorer's responsibility. It wasn't Alec's responsibility to be gun safe. It was the armorer's responsibility to do gun safety for him. And that's something you might expect from a leftist who has no experience with guns, is that they don't realize gun safety is your responsibility, not anyone else's. It's your responsibility. And clearly Alec Baldwin, who has been a very, I'm sure not so much anymore, very active, very adamant anti-2A advocate, funding multiple anti-2A organizations. So people like that don't have any understanding of guns because they don't have any experience with them. And so the left loves to think of guns as the thing that's the problem. They don't have any idea that it's the person that's the problem. And you see this with how they look at minority crime, where they'll say, oh, it's the guns that are the problem. We need gun control. When a minority murders somebody with a gun, they always consider them to be the victim. The way the left looks at guns is that the gun is the thing that's the problem, and the person that pulled the trigger is usually the victim. That's how they consider it. And so they're giving actually Alec the minority treatment, where they're treating him like an inner city thug who murdered somebody. And the left is trying to say, oh, well, it really wasn't his fault. It was the gun that did it. Alec's as much of a victim as anybody else is. The other thing is, so there was a question as to why was there a live round? Why was there a live round in a, quote, prop gun on a movie set? And some people are trying to suggest that someone was setting up Alec. They were setting him up to shoot and kill somebody by accident. And to which I would respond, bull, because as somebody who has a few firearms myself and has some experience in gun safety, actually, funny story. Alec has actually killed more people with a gun than I have. Not really I guess not a hard bar to hit, but I'd imagine most of you gun owners out there have not killed by accident nearly as many people as Alec Baldwin has, or even injured. Alec with one shot was able to kill and injure somebody, and I'm betting most of you gun owners out there haven't done either. So this idea that somebody loaded a live hot round into a real prop gun and handed it to Alec in an attempt to trick him into killing somebody. If you handed me a gun and told me it was a prop and tried to trick me into shooting somebody by sneaking a live round into it, you couldn't possibly get me to do that. You can hand me anything that looks like a gun and try to trick me into shooting and killing somebody, and it's not going to work, because guess what? Something that looks like a gun, I'm not going to point it and shoot it at somebody. Whether I think it's filled with fake ammo or real ammo, I'm not going to point it and shoot it at somebody. You couldn't possibly hand me a quote-unquote prop gun capable of firing live ammunition and trick me into shooting somebody. And actually, Hollywood knows this, because most, apparently not Alex, most Hollywood productions, when there's guns that are apparently being shot at each other, even if they're using blank ammunition, the actual setup, they'll fix it in editing, but the actual setup on scene, that they're not actually pointing the gun at anybody, even if it's firing blanks, because they don't want an accident to happen. And so they'll fix it in editing to make it look like they're shooting at each other, even if it is with blanks. But in reality, when they're actually shooting it, they're not actually pointing it at anybody. Now, there are a few people on Twitter who are trying to say, oh, well, sometimes they'll shoot it at the camera because it's a good shot to get it kind of like, right out of the muzzle blast. To which I say, yeah, I'm sure that is a cool shot. But cameras, they're not, it's 2021. You don't need to crank the camera. You can hit record and then you can walk away. You don't need to have somebody behind the camera. The person can just walk up to it and shoot at it. You don't need to actually have somebody behind it. So it's funny watching Twitter throughout all this because you've got a bunch of people who don't know anything about guns, don't know anything about gun safety, don't have any concept of personal responsibility, all commenting on this with all of those preconceived notions coming out that they don't have any idea of any concept of personal responsibility and don't know how guns work. And it's hilarious watching them all talk about this. So some funny memes that popped out of this. I by far did not get anywhere close to the best ones. There's just too many. But you actually have some of the best memes are really just reposting Alec Baldwin's old tweets. So we've got one here saying he's tweeting at Rep Liz Cheney. Alec Baldwin tweeted out to her, talks and seems so much like her father. I wonder if she's ever accidentally shot a good friend of hers in the face. Well, I don't know if Liz Cheney ever has, but Alec Baldwin sure has accidentally shot somebody in the face. Oof. Then you've got another one. Alec Baldwin tweeted out, which was retweeted by Stone Toss. Alec Baldwin tweeting out, I wonder how it must feel to wrongfully kill somebody. And then you got Stone Toss retweeting that saying, well, how was it? Oof. Let's see here. We've got a clipping from Los Angeles Times, which seems to have confirmed something I said a little bit ago. Los Angeles Times says, update, a colleague on the set of Rust was so alarmed by, quote, prop gun misfires that happened earlier in the week, he sent a text message to a unit production manager, quote, we've now had 3 accidental discharges. This is super unsafe. Again, I'll keep reiterating. They're calling it a prop gun. It's capable of firing live ammunition. That's called a gun. But if the media is going to insist on this identification of them as prop guns, then I have an announcement to make on the show today. It's a little hard for me to admit, but I have officially given up all of my firearms. I have this incident with Alec Baldwin has convinced me that guns are just too dangerous. I have turned in my AR-15 and my pistols and my rifles and my shotguns. I've gotten rid of all of them. And I've actually, with the proceeds from selling them off, I've actually reacquired prop duplicates of all of them. So I actually don't have any guns anymore. I have a bunch of prop guns, which is interesting. All my guns are now prop guns, and therefore, because they're prop guns, capable of firing live ammunition, they're actually no longer subject to any potential gun registry or any kind of firearms regulations because they're not real guns. You see, they're prop guns. So I know that me giving up my real firearms, that's kind of a cop out, right? Like you guys probably thought that I was a strong proponent of the Second Amendment, but no, actually I'm going to roll over on this one. I'm just going to kind of write off the Second Amendment as a battle I've lost. And so I wanted to be honest up front with all you guys just now, so that's on the record publicly that I, Fox Trevize, have given up all of my firearms, and I now will only exclusively own prop guns. Okay, prop guns that are capable of firing live ammunition. You think of the children, guys. You just got to think of the children, and maybe if you think of the children, you too will come to that same decision. That it is just, the Second Amendment was written 250 years ago, guys. Come on. I mean, it's modern day. Do you really need a real gun when a prop firearm will do? Come on, guys. Alrighty. So I think it's hilarious that Alec Baldwin's now going to be in this twist again. It's terrible that he killed somebody. But the reason why I think it's funny, and the reason why I think you guys should think it's funny too, that he is now in this situation, is that murderers, whether accidental or on purpose, people who kill other people deserve the scorn, ridicule, and mockery of society. Because if you don't point and laugh at Alec Baldwin with as much malice and mirth as you can muster, some other idiot in Hollywood, some other leftist idiot, some other maybe just a regular old good old boy American on the right who's got a firearm, they will think twice now every time they pick up something that even looks like a gun. And maybe they will follow some of the firearm safety rules. The 3 key ones being, don't point the barrel at anything you don't want to destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to destroy something, and don't have the gun loaded if you're not intending to use it. Know what's in there. I believe the other additional one is you got to know what is your target and what is beyond your target in case you miss. If Alec Baldwin had realized, oh, my target is the camera lady, I didn't realize the other producer was behind her too, maybe he wouldn't have fired. So again, why do I think it's funny? Why do I think you think it's funny? Because making fun of bad people who make bad mistakes, like, again, this isn't just like a oopsie daisy, like I bumped your car or something like that, or I scratched a fender, or I bought the wrong kind of jelly and now my wife's mad at me. This is a mistake that got somebody killed. Gun mistakes don't usually get a second chance on. It's a Second Amendment, not a second chance. So for gun culture generally, you got to make fun of Alec Baldwin because you don't want to be a Baldwin, right? And I think Baldwin needs to become a verb. Don't Baldwin. If you see somebody screwing around at the range, tell them to stop being a Baldwin. If you see somebody acting, unsafe or not using the gun correctly, tell them they're being a Baldwin. Stop Baldwining it. That needs to become a staple, that we scorn and ridicule and mock people who make mistakes like that. Because contrary to what people like Alec Baldwin would think, gun advocates and gun culture is not about being cavalier and messing around with guns in a dangerous way. It's about using them properly and in the appropriate context and being safe with them. And so we should make fun of people who are not safe with them, because at minimum, that might prompt the next guy to think, hey, I don't want someone to call me a Baldwin, so I'm going to be safe with my gun today. Alrighty, guys. Well, like I said, that was a tough show to go through because, I had to admit to you that I gave up all my firearms. But like I said, maybe it's something you guys want to do too. Maybe you should also give up all your firearms and only have prop guns. I think that's probably a good thing to do. Because as we know, prop firearms do not fall under any federal regulations. Okay, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I hope you had a good last week. Hopefully you have a good next week. Stay safe out there and keep each other company. Keep the ones that you love close. Keep your enemies closer. That's how you get the knife in them. All right, guys, we will see you again next week. This has been Trevize signing off. Peace.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.